TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
It is mind-blowing
and heartbreaking
how many original scripts are written every year but are never made.
So we seek out these scripts and bring them to life with full audio production and professional actors.
Check us out at Undiscovered Scripts.
Movies made of paper.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
Free!
You can watch Mr. Rogers, you can watch Three's Company, and you can turn on Fame or the Newlywed Game or the Addams Family.
All right, Matt. I'm going to be real upfront right now.
It's important that we be honest with each other.
Brady Bunch is a strong contender for what might be my lowest ranked parody in Weird Al's history.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's interesting because I haven't thought about where my lowest ranked ones would go. It's certainly not my favorite. I don't know if it's going to be at the very bottom. There are a couple other things that come to my head as we go through the years here.
And I think that it doesn't help itself by coming after Eat It and Midnight Star. Like this takes a real nosedive at track 3. It picks itself up pretty quickly from that point, but this is, I would say, the lowest point of the In3D album is the Brady Bunch parody.
I think I might agree with that. This is, well, you know, it's interesting because this is one that really has, we were talking about how these things age, and so much of that is kind of out of your control. And it is really funny that this song is just reference after reference to TV shows that I feel like, and funny enough, actually, I never put it together that shortly after this, we have the song about Jeopardy.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that he was really on a kick at this point in time.
Yeah, this is the proto-TV album. This was before he was the food guy.
But he's just kind of like running down TV shows. And it's not that I haven't heard of them, but it's like, I don't know. It has dated this song in a really odd way.
It's dated in an odd way. I think the other thing that really bothers me about this song is... So let's start here. So this is the first parody that was recorded for the album. It was a parody of the Safety Dance by Men Without Hats, where the narrator expresses his dislike for the sitcom The Brady Bunch. The song also contains a lyrical adaptation of the Brady Bunch theme song, something that Yankovic would later do on Money for Nothing, Beverly Hillbillies for UHF. I am convinced that this song is we have a song that we're listening to that is entirely based on the idea that he was like, oh man, you can sing the Brady Bunch theme to the beat of Safety Dance. And that's as far as the thinking went, because it is just him listing a bunch of shows that he would rather watch besides the Brady Bunch. But like when he sings Brady Bunch where Safety dances, it doesn't even feel smooth. Like it feels real clunky and awkward.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because it was funny you were saying how that was the original conceit, and I feel like that probably makes sense as an original conceit, but it doesn't work that well.
No.
That's what's weird about this song. Like this is, you know, it's funny for like our taste of it aside. It's an interesting thing to talk about because, this feels clunky. It feels kind of lazy. It does not feel like one of his more inspired choices at all.
For sure.
So it makes me wonder why, like how we got here, how we got to this point. And all I can think is that, you know, this was, it's all pop culture, right? He's just like trying to grab onto whatever bits of pop culture. So he's doing the parody of a song while also referencing all of these other pop culture moments of the moment.
Yeah.
In it, and he's kind of like looking for things to latch onto, or looking for things for listeners to latch onto. Is like, I get it. It's funny because he's referencing, you know,
blank,
Three's Company in a song about the. I don't know. It's just it feels like the reference alone is the joke.
Yeah,
but that's not a joke. That's just referencing a show. That's on. Yeah, I don't know. Again, the thought process behind this one, how this came to be, is odd to me.
So for a really long time, when I was like a hardcore wrestling fan, there would be this joke that my friends and I would make where we'd be hanging out watching a pay-per-view and there'd be like a really stupid match, like just a dumb as dirt match.
Yeah.
And we would think to ourselves like, ugh, if someone who didn't watch wrestling tuned in and this was the first match that they saw, they would wonder what the fuck is wrong with us for loving this thing as much as we do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel like if Brady Bunch was someone's entrance to Weird Al, they would not understand why you and I have the love and passion that we do for Al.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, just I'm kind of like I'm oddly fascinated by it because it does just feel like a miss, which is really not typical for him.
No. And like a big miss.
Yeah.
Like this is it's kind of one of the more I think this might be the most difficult one that we're ever going to have to talk about because there's really like not a lot of meat on the bone to begin with it.
Yeah, kind of not. I mean, so I'm curious, like, do you have, I think you covered this song. You covered Safety Dance on One Hit Thunder.
Yes.
I did not actually listen to that episode. I'm curious your thoughts of just the original.
So let's get into that. Yeah, let's talk about the original real quick. Well, let me ask you first, since I already know my established opinion and did like 45
your opinion
minutes.
is already on the record.
Yeah, so what is your opinion on Safety Dance, first off?
I don't mind this song. It's goofy. It's a novelty. I also do feel like when I listen to it, it sounds kind of like a dollar store version of a lot of better new wave music happening at that time. It's a little paint by numbers, but I don't know. And maybe this is some nostalgia coming into play for me. I have ridiculous, silly memories, not unlike Mickey, actually, which we already talked about. This feels very similar to me to that. I think Mickey is a better song, but this is very like fourth grade school dance, roller skating party type stuff. And I don't mind it. It's not, I mean, is it a great song? Probably not. But I don't have a real problem with it.
You know, it's funny. It wasn't until you just said this, but I realized that another big thing that's kind of an uphill battle with this parody, and it's something that we talked about briefly with Ricky, but this is a parody of a novelty song, which is like already an uphill battle.
Yes.
I like this song, Safety Dance. It's grown on me. It grew on me a lot more listening to the when we did the episode for One Hit Thunder on the song. Men Without Hats is almost like Canada's Chumbawamba, where they weren't making punk music, but they had a very punk attitude towards a lot of their stuff. This song specifically is about him getting kicked out of a club for pogo dancing and him writing, it's like an anti-bouncers song. Like, it's like, hey, like, just because it looks like we're being violent, we're all friends here. And like, this is like our sense of community is like jumping around together and, you know, the closeness of it. But like to the squares out there that are hired at the club to keep things safe, they don't see it as that. They see it as violence. And then, you know, you get a weird fucking music video and everyone thinks that it's a nuclear war song. But like, I like it. It's kind of one of those things that I feel like also got co-opted by Family Guy, where there's stuff that's like perfectly fine, but then like, and I don't even know if Family Guy did anything about it. I haven't watched Family Guy in decades, but like, same thing with like Surfing Bird. Like, I like the song Surfing Bird for it being a really fucking great garage rock song, but it's kind of been tainted by like, the normal person only knows that song because Family Guy mentioned it. So it's like a joke. It's just like a jokey song to them. It's a similar complaint I have with like, I love Randy Newman. I think Randy Newman is one of the most brilliant songwriters in American history.
Agreed.
But most people's exposure to him is the Family Guy parody that he just like writes songs about everything he sees. And it's like, oh my God, you're cutting yourself off from like one of the most incredible lyricists that has like ever walked this earth.
It's true.
So I think that Safety Dance has become kind of it's kind of one of those things that like, it started as a joke, it got kind of good, then it became a joke again, and now like because of the joke, it's kind of becoming good a second time. Like it's just like in this constant, like, it's like a snake eating its tail type situation.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think it's also anything that classes as a novelty song is almost certainly, I mean, even songs that aren't wear out their welcome when they get played too much. And then these sorts of things, because they really appear everywhere, really wear out their welcome. And after a while, people are just like, oh my God, this is like the last thing I want to hear. But then enough time passes and then people get more detached from it. And then it becomes this great little piece of nostalgia. Again, not to go back to Mickey, but I feel like that's exactly the same, where now I feel like any younger person who wasn't around for the first wave of that song would hear that and be like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah. And Men Without Hats are still going. They put out an album this year, which is...
Really?
Yeah, which is crazy. They bounced around through different sounds. They're technically not a true one-hit wonder. They did have a second song that did well on most charts except for the Billboard Top 100, which was Pop Goes the World, that came out like 5 years after Safety Dance.
Wow, I don't think I
it
know
actually
that song.
charted higher than Safety Dance in their home country of Canada. But
Wow.
they've been popping out music pretty regularly. But in the 90s, they tried to do a grunge album. And that was like the one album that Chris was like, yeah, they're not a grunge band. Like I want the keyboards, I want the dancey music. And that led us down a whole... That episode's fun. We were joined by this guy, Ryan Stick, who I'm sure will be on Weird Algorithm at some point. We got into a whole conversation of artists who tried to change their sound to stay relevant in the early 90s and like how unlistenable a lot of those albums are. Generation Swine by Motley Crue is a big one that comes to mind for me.
It happened to a lot of people. I mean, that was like, I think if you were any band in the 90s, and funny enough, we're going to get to this with Al, but if you were any band in the 90s and when Nirvana exploded, basically everybody was just like, well, you got to do something like this. Like, you got to try to cash in on this success. And it sent a lot of other acts really down a bad path. I mean, I've heard stories of bands who like got dropped.
Yeah.
Because they weren't, if you weren't at U2 level, a smaller band was like, well, we don't really do the grunge thing, we do this. And then the label's like, cool, well, bye. Because that was it. That was all that was selling.
I remember one of my favorite sentences written by this guy, Chuck Klosterman, he writes all these beautiful essays about pop culture, and he talks about the 90s specifically. I haven't read his book, The 90s, just yet, but I'm very excited to sit down and read it.
Yeah.
But in one of his earlier books, he talks about how like history has rewritten the importance of Nirvana just a bit, where he's like, if you're to believe history, it's like Smells Like Teen Spirit video drops, and then the next day, like everything is different. And he's like, it was way more gradual than that. And he's like, I'm embarrassed to say that for a long time, me and my friends couldn't tell Nirvana and Ugly Kid Joe apart.
Oh wow, that is an embarrassing thing to admit.
But like
in hindsight, at least.
In hindsight, but then it's like I could see Ugly Kid Joe being one of those bands that kind of they were in that weird pocket. I love Ugly Kid Joe, side note, but they were in that very strange pocket where it's like they're kind of a hair metal band. They got a little bit of grunginess to them, but I could see them just not being able to survive in the insanity that was 1991 to 1994.
Yeah, absolutely.
At Maximum Mediocrity, people say things like,
I don't dress like this on the regular basis. This isn't my, pooping uniform. This is not
and they also say things like,
The nurses are usually either angels of mercy or whores.
Every episode is a new experience where you get to know people that aren't famous but should be.
Why am I facing Floyd Mayweather in the woods?
My co-host Morgan and I track down the people you didn't know you needed to hear from.
It's like hot sex in a mug.
We are the Maximum Mediocrity Podcast, and we are on all major podcasting platforms. We'll be waiting for you.
But yeah, I mean, Men Without Hats is worth checking out. I can tell you that there are better Men Without Hats songs than the song Brady Bunch.
I'm glad to know that. That's really cool, and I like that they're still a band and they're still doing the thing. That's awesome.
Yeah, they dipped in and out, but yeah, they've been continually putting out records for the last couple decades, which, I mean, you're in a band that's doing the same damn thing, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, they got 20 years on Wheatus, but
Still, like, I think there are people who are genuinely shocked when they hear, like, oh, we just put out a new record. And they're like, really?
Oh, yeah, we get that all the time. Yeah, it's one of the funniest, like, I'm sure, again, a band like Men Without Hats get it, too. Like, you play a show and someone comes up to you and like, where have you guys been? It's like, we've been here doing this. We have gone nowhere ever. It's just been plowing through the whole time.
What bums me out, and this is like a big point of contention with me with the One Hit Thunder podcast, is like, I hate when people get shitty about it. Like, it's fine to be like, oh, I don't remember this. But it's like, oh, why do all these people pay money to go to a show to see a band they only know one song of? And it's like, well, maybe they know more than one song. Like, just because you only know one song, like, you know, like,
yeah.
I was at that show. I was singing along with a bunch of the songs that got played. I was getting stoked about the new material. Like, I was bummed that you didn't play Sunshine. Like, you know, like, there are people who can be fans of music that you don't know other songs by. Like, that's like...
It's very true.
That was like, I've said that part of the reason why I wanted to start One Hit Thunder was that I just really wanted more people to know the song "Singing in My Sleep" by Semisonic, because I think that song is amazing. Like, I don't know, there are bands that are again, this is not really tied to Weird Al, but I guess it kind of is. It's very frustrating to have a conversation with someone who's very close-minded towards, like, oh, well, if I don't know it, it can't be good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got into an argument with someone when the Beastie Boys were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he was like, oh, they only got inducted because the one member died. And I'm like, no, they were like a massively important band. He's like, yeah, maybe like for that one album in the 80s. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I don't remember anything after Sabotage, so they couldn't have been relevant anymore. And I'm like, well, that's insane, because they were relevant and continued to put out big records and push music videos to like new limits and like, you know, like.
Well, it's funny. Sabotage is obviously it was a big song, but when you said like that big record from the 80s, that's not. I didn't think of Sabotage. I assumed he was thinking of License to Ill.
And I'm sure that's what he was thinking of. And then like he's like, the most I remember after that was maybe Sabotage. You know, like it was like an older dude, but it's like, dude, Intergalactic was huge when I was a kid. Like,
sure, absolutely.
And even if they didn't have a big hit after that, every time that a new music video dropped from them, it was a big deal on MTV. It was like, oh, here's the next thing that the Beastie Boys are putting out, and like, there were people who were waiting with bated breath for when the Hot Sauce Committee album was finally going to drop, because there'd been like, it's, I don't know, that's the stuff that like is just so infuriating, because no one's sitting there like, because Madonna hasn't had a hit in 10 years, being like, oh, Madonna doesn't deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She's really fallen off in her 60s.
Well, in a way, I actually feel like that older mentality is probably going to fade a bit now, because music has now just become so much more niche across the board. Like, it's
it
not
doesn't matter
just,
what it is.
It doesn't matter what it is. Like, you know, wildly popular music just doesn't get played on the radio anymore. Like, it's, you can have a song like, oh, I've never heard of this song. And you're like, oh, it's got 1 billion plays on Spotify. It's like, well, what do I know? I'm, you know, I work in music, and it happens to me all the time. But, you know, sort of swinging back to Al a little bit, it's part of what I love about the parodies, and also what I feel like is a miss on this track is, we said this before, I remember saying this about Stop Dragging My Car Around, is I usually get a sense when he parodies something that he loves it, that he loves what he's doing, and that it's like a very respectful and honoring the track. And I don't really get that sense with this one. This feels oddly cut and paste and just sort of going through the motions, both with the lyrics that he chose to use for it and the song in general. Yeah, I just don't get that sense of like appreciation. And again, I could be completely wrong. This is just in my in my mind. But.
I agree with you, because again, I think that there's this element where my version of the writing of this song is Weird Al driving around, Safety Dance is on the radio, and he jokingly starts singing the Brady Bunch theme to it, and then is like, oh, that worked really well, I'm going to write a whole song around that concept. And it's like, it's a lot of work to get to that one like 30-second part where he's singing the Brady Bunch song over top of the beat. And maybe it's because it's fresh in my head. I went to a high school graduation yesterday at my old high school, and the kids sang the alma mater. And I still knew all of the words to my high school alma mater because when I was in school, they had hammered it into us that like we needed to beef up our school spirit. Everyone needed to know the words of the alma mater. And it got to the point where teachers would give us tests where for like 20 bonus points, we had to write the alma mater on the back of the test. Yeah.
Man, if my school had an alma mater, I did not hear it once.
So I didn't want to lose out on those bonus points. The traditional like borderline hymn type alma mater, where it's like knowledge, truth, and honor. Like no real like rhythm or beat. But when I was looking at the lyrics, I realized that I could sing it to the Flintstones theme and I would remember the words. So here I am like almost 20 years later. And it's like, knowledge, truth, and honor, may our motto always be. And to some Valley High School, blue and gold, we shall love thee. 4 years that we will look back to you, a light that never will go dim, a guiding light you'll always be. And we shall be true to, we shall be true to, we shall be true to thee. Like... It's locked in there. Like it is just living rent free in my brain now.
That's, oh man, that really made my day. I loved that one line. It didn't rhyme when it really thought it was going to rhyme.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
God, that's great. That's so weird. My school, I don't think my school had one of those things. I don't think
most high schools do. I've never heard of a school having an
super
alma mater.
Weird. That feels very like from a TV show.
Yeah, we're just like a fucking weird school in the suburbs. Like we're not like anything prestigious.
Did you guys have like pep rallies and stuff like that? Did you have like a sports team at your school that was like a big deal?
I mean, we had a sports team. We had like football and basketball, but no one. I mean, I guess people went to the football games, but they weren't singing the alma mater there. Like it was
so interesting.
We didn't do pep rallies. We did homecoming. That was it. Like that was the only pep rally. Was
my
like
school
homecoming.
had a homecoming thing with a dance, but I didn't go. That wasn't my scene, so I didn't do it. It just reminded me of like. My wife is from England, and she like years ago was like we're watching some TV show that had a pep rally, like from any kind of classic sitcom high school thing, and we're like, "Is that a thing in America?" I was like, "It wasn't for me. It probably is somewhere."
I'm sure that there are schools. I'm sure that you go to like Texas where they have like those crazy football. Fans, like I'm sure that they have like the weekly pep rally during football season or whatever. But yeah, we had literally just homecoming. Like it was like homecoming. They would take us out on the bleachers. It was an excuse to get out of the school for an hour. They would, do their whole spiel. I don't think they even do the Mr. and Mrs. Chai because that was our rival school that we always played for homecoming. So it was like the people could sign up to be Mr. and Mrs. Chai, and it was essentially a drag show.
Wow! Oh my God!
Yeah, making fun of those Chai kids. So it was like the guys would play the girls, and the girls would play the guys for Mr. and Mrs. Chai. It was a different time. 2003. Oh,
that's crazy. I didn't have. So we had a homecoming, but we didn't go. It was was on the weekend. It was like you showed up, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not going."
No, this was.
I didn't miss any school for it. There was no.
This was midday. This was like.
Wow.
This was like if school got done at 3. This was at like 1:30, 2 o'clock on the Friday before the homecoming game. Like going outside to the bleachers. They would have like games and shit. Like it was boring, but it was my survival skill throughout all of high school was that I was on the TV studio, which meant that while I was required to attend all of these events, I was attending them as a camera guy. So I usually was like up in the announcing booth, or at one point I was on the roof of the announcing booth with like a camera set up, and then we had gotten really like the reason why I'm doing podcasts is almost definitely because of that, because we had to figure out scrappy ways to get the best quality of stuff. So we would get on the roof of our school's bleachers announcement booth and have cables running through the roof into where the announcers were, running into like an SLR cord into the camera. So when we were filming it, we were getting the announcements with the
audio,
and then eventually we figured out how to like set up a good enough shortwave satellite that we could be broadcasting the football game live on our like school channel. So like anybody within like the 10, 15-mile radius had like a channel where it would post like school closure announcements and like snow day announcements, but we could live stream the football games on there.
Man, I'm impressed. Like, again, I don't think my school had any of that, and if it did, I was not aware of it, which is a shame because I feel like I would have been into that myself. But
so that was a lot to do with the teacher.
That's impressive. There's one similarity there. One of my music teachers was also, I think, out of his own pocket. I don't know for sure, but I think out of his own pocket, he bought a bunch of early iMacs for the music theory class because this goes back a ways, there was a program called Digital Performer that was essentially a proto version of GarageBand, like a DIY, make your own music. At that time, that was really cutting edge stuff, like a home audio recording system like that. And set us up so that we could learn theory, but then also actually like play and make little compositions on the computer and stuff. Yeah. And that was huge for me. I loved that.
Shout out to the teachers that like legitimately give a shit. Like
I truly care.
Every school deserves at least a couple teachers like that.
Sadly, I feel like a lot of kids don't even get that one.
No.
I also had someone similar, like, again, someone who really feels like is your ally, which is
makes
so
all
huge.
the difference. Because there's kids who don't need that help, but the kids who do will appreciate that teacher
big time
for their entire life.
I would generally be curious, like, if anyone wants to chime in what their high school experience was like. Was it more like Matt's, where you had an alma mater and a homecoming events where you were out there or either cheering on your team or running video cameras from the roof of the building? Or was it like me where no one cared about anything and you were getting through it? If so, if your school did have an alma mater, did you learn the words by creating a Brady Bunch style parody of your alma mater and singing it along to the Flintstones or some other thing? One other little note on Brady Bunch, because I just looked it up and this is interesting to me just because of the business side of music. Al did have to credit as co-writers of this song the two creators of the show, The Brady Bunch.
Oh, because he sings the theme. Yeah,
because he sings the theme song.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
It does make sense from a business perspective. It seems like a real mistake.
Yep. Oh, we're gonna talk about, because we got a polka on this album, and there's some interesting stuff that goes on with how he can afford those polkas.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, let's do the rankings real quick. I mean, it's no secret on my end. I said it right out the front. This is the bottom of my list right now for parodies.
I think that I'm going to put it above Stop Dragging My Car Around.
Okay. I don't agree with that call. This is the first call. That's similarly to when I put Ricky above Eat It, and you and Chris was like, "What are you thinking?" That's how I'm thinking on this one.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. I would listen to this before I listened to Stop Dragging My Car Around.
I think the difference is that Stop Dragging My Car Around, and maybe this is why you put it a little bit higher. Stop Dragging My Car Around, I feel nothing towards, whereas like Brady Bunch, I like definitively am like annoyed when I'm listening to it.
That's fair. Yeah, I think it actually is.
It's like it gives you a reaction.
A reaction is better than nothing. Like Stop Dragging My Car Around feels like it just passes me by.
Yeah.
And this one at least is something. But yeah, not my favorite. But better than Stop Dragging My Car Around.
We go. All right. I mean, I love that our lists are so dramatically different. I
know.
The only thing that we agree on is currently our positions for Another One Rides the Bus is exactly the same.
Oh, there you go.
That's it, though. Nothing else is in the same spot. All right, Matt, we'll be back with more next week.
Sounds good.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.